del barrio. Dicen que tú eres el mejor del barrio. Que tú tirijala y que bien todo compones. Mentiras tuyas, solo mentiras, porque en el barrio hay mucha alegría. A pruébame lo tuyo para yo creerte. Pruébame lo tuyo para yo creerte. Suéname la conga, suena el bongo, suena el timbal. Inspírate, hermano, con mucha alegría, porque ahorita aquí vengo yo.
And hello, everybody. How you doing? This is 103.5 FM WNHH, New Haven Independent. I'm Jose Candelario, and this is our first show ever. First show ever here at 103. Thank you, Paul Bass, for having me, and Harry Dross for providing the technical support. And to kick it off, I have Mr. Leonard Jihad. Mr. Leonard Jihad is the Executive Director of the Connecticut Violence Intervention Program, but he has a background in corrections, probations, community service, up and down everywhere. Community servant, man of the year multiple times, multiple organizations for all his work in the community. Thank you, Mr. Jihad, for joining me today.
Great morning. It's a pleasure to be here.
Let's get into it.
Absolutely.
Let's get into it. You work with the youth here, and you help identify violent youth?
Yes. Well, we're contracted to work with youth ages 13 to 24 that are engaged in risky activity in the greater New Haven community. So by risky, we allude to shooters, gang members, and also victims of violence. But we also work with the violent reentry population that's leaving the Department of Corrections and reentering New Haven.
And you refer to them as shooters.
Shooters.
And can you define that for people who, these are the people who are committing
right. So
the shootings in our neighborhoods, and we're talking about all New Haven, not just DeVille. You do serve Fairhaven, and walk me through the process of a shooting. Let's say a shooting takes place, it's midnight. What happens here?
We'll get a notification from the police and the hospital also. So usually we'll go directly to the scene, and if no one's at the scene, we'll go to the hospital. So in going to the hospital, we try to de-escalate emotions of their family and friends so they don't retaliate. So we want to calm them down also. And, just to, calm emotions down so the hospital staff can give the best treatment to the victim, to their loved one. And if the victim is cognizant, we'll go inside and we'll start working with the victim also, because at that time of a shooting, they're either going to want to retaliate or change their life. So we try to help them navigate that at that time.
So when you walk in and you have these families, they're hysterical. The energy is all over the map. What do you tell your counselors? What do you tell yourself when you're going in there?
Well, I supervise a group of street outreach workers. They're also credible messengers, people who were in that life, and they redeemed themselves, and now they want to help clean up the community that they, at one time helped, destroy or tear down. So they understand the components or the factors that contribute to community violence. So they work with them. They'll talk. They said, listen, I'm going to get back, and sometimes it's just as simple as, do you have to do it now? Do you have to do it tonight? So the more time that's, that passes, people start to de-escalate the emotions.
Yeah,
Yep. So, and, we also work with the hospital because, culturally, they're there to save lives. They're really not social workers, so they really don't understand, the black and brown communities. They may react a little bit more emotionally. when someone is harmed, so they may be a little bit louder, but that doesn't mean that you're angry, it's just a little bit louder. So, we act as a liaison to that also.
Wow. I want to go through a couple of myths because we were talking a bit earlier. One of the myths is that most of the violent crimes have been taking place here in New Haven because we had a couple of shootings recently, a lot recently. You can tell COVID is over. People back out in the streets because it was quiet. 2021 was quiet, but now it's on the rise. One of the things I've heard was that most of these shootings that are taking place are being done by the youth. Is that true?
Well, no, that's not accurate. So it's hard to measure who's actually committing the violence until there's an arrest. So, but we know that the victims of community violence are not really the youth. The average age of a black male being shot in New Haven is like 28 years old. For Latinos, about 30. For Caucasian males, about 32. So it's not really the youth that are affected by community violence, although, they are involved. But, it's always easy to point the finger at the most vulnerable population. And that's what people always do. It's the youth, it's the youth that are stealing cars.
Yeah, because there's some legislation that was just passed up in the state capitol, and people were a little bit upset because it did target blacks and brown disproportionately in the laws now. Pushed by Republicans, by the way.
Absolutely. And that's usually what it is. And, and I've had conversations with them also, but, you can't start a fire unless there's fuel. Kids can't steal the cars unless you're leaving your doors open and leaving the fob in proximity, to the car. These kids aren't hot wiring the cars, and they're not taking the cars to chop shops or anything. So it's not for really any financial gain. They're thrill seeking, that type of thing. But if you lock your doors, the kids will check their cars, and if it's locked, they'll just keep moving, until, to the next vehicle. However, there are incidents of carjackings, but those are few and far in between.
In my neighborhood, a neighbor of mine left their car running and disappeared. They just jumped in it and left. The car was unlocked, and they lost the car. Another neighbor, same thing, was taking her groceries, went inside for 2 seconds, car was gone. So those things we can help ourselves. Right. I like numbers. What percentage actually of the youth is involved in criminal activity here in New Haven? Do you have statistics to that effect?
Absolutely. So the ones that are involved in violent crime, not specifically New Haven, but statewide, it's 2 to 3%, maybe. So
we're talking about 2 to 3% New Haven of 250,000.
Absolutely.
A couple of hundred, maybe?
Maybe.
And out of those couple of hundreds, how many have you really been identifying? How many can you say you're working with?
We have collaborative meetings over Zoom with juvenile probation, with the city of New Haven, with the police, anyone that has a concern, Clifford Beers, so we talk. They share information with us about youth, who may be coming off the porch, so to say, and, the youth that we need to get ahead of us. And I'll say the ComStep meeting was excellent because local, state, and federal law enforcement were in that meetings. And what was different from our program than other programs around the country, we would also get referrals from the feds. They don't investigate people until they're 18 years old, but they may identify a younger brother or sister who may be in need. Say, listen, you need to get a hand, put a hand on this kid before he really comes off the porch and gets involved. So
that's the level of prevention we're talking about. Then it's trying to cut it off because it might be too late for Big Brother who's out there hustling, doing what he got to do, but maybe little brother is on that same track, and you can help out in that scenario.
Absolutely. So and even with those youth, you have youth that are involved in so-called violent crime, and they're not arrested, and they keep doing it. So you have a few people that are doing a lot, and usually
so when you say a few people doing a lot, so you're talking about like maybe one person could be involved in multiple shooting incidences in the city?
Multiple shootings or multiple car thefts, They said a kid can steal a car, or youth can steal a car, 8 to 12 times before they're caught. So you have a few people that are doing a lot, and that's pretty consistent with all crime.
Okay, same thing. So we've had shootings in here. We can't even. There was one in Hamden at a bus stop where a couple of one person was walking and then was harassed, turned around and just shot at some kids.
Right.
Where are they getting these guns? who's giving them? I mean, is it who is it? Where?
Guns since the pandemic, caused by the COVID, gun sales are up 80 to 85%.
Wow.
Requests for permits are up 120%. So, people feel vulnerable in their communities, and now they feel that they have to have a gun. So with that, there are more guns that kids can put their hands on. And, if you go up to Berlin Turnpike to a gun store, you can show up 9 o'clock in the morning to pick a number. They won't call you till 2 o'clock. That's how flooded they are, and that's how busy they are with guns. So we have gun buyback programs. People are giving up their old guns. Well, that's white folks in the suburbs. The black and brown communities usually don't give up their guns. They don't trade their guns in. But so there's a lot of transfer of guns, but then now we have these ghost guns.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I grew up with guys who would just blank serial numbers on guns that they purchased out of a trunk somewhere.
Absolutely.
And I witnessed it several times, so I know that
Absolutely.
but there are ways of tracing it through the bullet forensics and all
not
that.
with the ghost guns.
No?
Not with the ghost guns. No.
Wow.
The ghost guns have no serial numbers or anything. And then
So how do they get it before they do the ballistics testing? Are these guns that are because I know there's a process for a gun before it's sold that has to be
not with the ghost guns. It's a black market for it with the ghost guns, and all you need is a 3D printer to put it together. And so we had one gentleman up in New Britain. He was arrested with 150 ghost guns. Yeah, another gentleman up in, I think it was Haddam or Killingworth up Route 9, arrested with 150 ghost guns. And so when I talk to the youth about these ghost guns, how are you getting your hands on these guns? They're ghost guns. And not only that, they have clips that can hold 50 rounds that they're using also. And that one young man, I had him turn in his clip to me, and he says, I can get another one. He said, everyone has them. So again, it's the gun culture where people think that everyone has a gun, so they need to have a gun also. So that's what we're trying to aim all of our efforts right now, to put the gun down. You don't need to feel vulnerable in your community. And if you do feel vulnerable, let me talk to the other side to reduce the vulnerability so no one has to carry a gun.
Now, do you have a Hispanic case worker? Do you have a Hispanic case worker that's bilingual?
Yes.
Okay, that's the number one thing, because they were saying that I talk to people, right? People express their angst before they express their support. So one of the questions was, are you in Fairhaven? Do you have someone that can deal with that community, work with the community?
Yes. So I do have a Latina, Jelani Santiago. So bilingual, female. I guess it helps that she's beautiful also, so she does gather the attention, of folks in the street. But, I'll take this time to solicit, that we are looking for an outreach worker for the Fairhaven community.
Specifically for Fairhaven. Spanish-speaking, if there's more, the better.
Absolutely.
Have you noticed an uptick in that community when it comes to youth violence also? Since now they're like second generation almost?
Yeah, we are identifying from my time working in corrections and probation, right, that is generational. And that we do know the parents, uncles, and also the leaders in the community. Those kids that are, again, coming off the porch, and, while I may not know them, they know us. So it is important that we have someone more, preferably someone who grew up in that area, who knows the business owners and who knows, who can have resources, for youth.
Okay, so
I can take you right over here and I can help you get a job. I can help you change, your thinking.
And before we go on, again, what's a good phone number for you right now for a person who's interested in applying for that position?
Okay. I will give my numbers 203-410-2580, or they can even apply through our website, www.ct for Connecticut, ctintervention.org.
ctintervention.org right now to apply if you want to be a part of the solution in the community. If you like working with the youth, you're not afraid to step out into the streets, get involved in the beef, because someone's got to slice it. Someone's got to get in there and be a mediator. And that's what we really need in our community, people to smooth things over. I mean, the Guardian Angels did it back in the day. Now I think your program works similarly, where it's about quelling the tensions that are out there, because a lot of the tension is unwarranted. I mean, what is it? What is the number one reason for people to be angry at each other that you find?
Yeah, it's not really, back in the day we were coming up, it was about money.
Yeah.
It's not really about money right now. It's about clout and disrespect. So one thing that we do is we help people identify their triggers, things that really make them angry. If someone disrespects you, if someone says a certain thing, you're able to identify that through cognitive behavioral therapy. There's a program that we utilize with the youth, and it helps them identify them. And then, what's your response? What's your riskiest thought? What's your riskiest action? And then what's an alternative that you can do? Because if things really, really go bad, you could end up, in court. You could end up harming someone. And like I always say, no one wakes up in the morning and said, I'm going to make a bad decision and really hurt someone and ruin the rest of my life. It just doesn't happen like that.
Cognitive behavior therapy.
CBT.
CBT and
Absolutely.
triggers. You're using a lot of the new buzz terms that people are using and describing their mental health situation.
Absolutely.
And how they go about. And I think a lot of it, I'm a big person of emotional intelligence.
That's
And
right.
I just think that that's one of the biggest tools that we have that we can use and instill in our communities, and especially to develop, because you're talking about insecurities and confidence, right?
That's right.
If a confident man has no reason to be out there,
No.
protecting his ego or,
No.
but you're correct. We only got a few more minutes left.
Gotcha.
You got the floor. You can speak to New Haven right now.
I just want, so we do have a building at 230 Ashman Street in the Dixwell Monterey area. So we do have a music studio upstairs. We asked the youth what was gonna get them off the streets into our building so we can work with you. They wanted a music studio. So we do have music producers and engineers that have worked with Chris Brown, Rihanna, Jeremiah, and some other Chicago drill rappers. So they get it. They, really work with the youth. So, you can come by and pop up at our building at 230 Ashman Street. But the main message I want to get to all youth, and more especially our brown and black populations, is to be authentic and to be real with yourself. People always said, "Oh, Jihad, you're corny." I said, "Well, if being happy is being corny, well, I'll be corny.
I'll be that.
I'll be that, right?" And I accept that. Now, I actually embrace my, my so-called corniness, because I'm authentic to myself. So, at night when you're alone in your bed, you really want to think about your dreams, your goals, and everything. Be authentic to yourself and not what everyone else wants you to do. So that's the message that we give to the kids. And then, it does work. That, some CBT, and also basic needs. And then we usually have a successful resolution, to working with the youth.
So there is a facility, 230 Ashman Street. You got ctintervention.org. There are positions available there for individuals in our community who want to get involved, who have been involved. The more credentials, the better. I mean, if you're from the streets and you don't have credentials, but yet you want to work with the youth, you want to make a change and be positive, still apply. Still apply for this job. ctintervention.org. Go up there. Even if you don't got a degree, sometimes you don't need a degree.
Absolutely.
Positive attitude. You were mentioning that at my daughter's graduation speech, that attitude can circumvent talent and even knowledge of the job.
That's right.
Because you have a willingness to learn and be there.
And care.
And care.
That's right.
You have to care about Mr. Jihad. Thank you very much for your time.
Absolutely.
We're going to have you again in a couple of months. We're going to talk again, bring it back, talk more about the youth, especially if you got an event coming up. Please let me know.
Okay. Will do.
This is Jose Candelario. We just kept it 100 for you. Keep it in 100. I'm Jose Candelario. This is Leonard Jihad. We're on WNHH 103.5, 103 FM. And thank you very much for your time. Harry Dross is in the building. Thank you, Mr. Paul Bass, and especially our guest right now for this half hour, Mr. Leonard Jihad, for giving us his time.
Hay mucha alegría. A la 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 la, pruébame lo tuyo para yo creerte. Pruébame lo tuyo para yo creerte. Suéname la conga, suena el bongo, suena el timbal. Inspírate, hermano, con mucha alegría.